In 1961, President John F. Kennedy challenged the U.S. to go to the moon by the end of the decade, thus creating the Apollo program. The Apollo program was a NASA program that included 11 space flights. Some of the flights tested the equipment and some landed on the moon. The very first Apollo flight happened in 1968, the last in 1972. These flights allowed 12 astronauts to walk on the moon, where they took photos and collected samples of the moon to bring back to Earth. The program's main goal was to land humans on the moon and bring them safely back to Earth. 6 of the missions achieved this goal, including Apollo 11 and Apollo 17. The very first manned mission to land on the moon was Apollo 11. This mission changed our understanding of the moon for years to come. The first steps on the moon were taken by Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on July 20, 1969, just 4 days after the spacecraft was launched from NASA's Kennedy Space Center Launch Complex on July 16, 1969. The purpose of this mission was very clear: for man to take their first steps on the moon and to collect the first lunar samples and photographs in preparation for future missions. There were many lunar samples found during this mission, including 193 grams of basalt, which ended up being 10 centimeters across. The basalts found contained more titanium than basalts on Earth, ranged in age between 3.6 to 3.9 billion years old, and were formed from at least 2 different magma sources. Another sample discovered during the mission was 213 grams of breccia, totaling 8 centimeters across. This lunar sample comes from the impact of meteorites hitting rocks on the moon when the heat and pressure fuses small rocks into new ones. In all, astronauts collected 22 kilograms of material. The last Apollo mission to land man on the moon was Apollo 17. This mission carried the only trained geologist to walk on the lunar surface, lunar module pilot Harrison Schmitt. The astronauts on Apollo 17 went the greatest distance using the lunar roving vehicle and brought back to Earth the greatest amount of samples. The spacecraft was launched from NASA's Kennedy Space Center Launch Complex on December 7, 1972. The purpose of the final mission in the Apollo program was to gather geological information and add to the network of automatic scientific stations. It also set up experiments on the surface of the moon that would gather data for many years to come. There were many samples found during this mission to the moon. One found was orange soil that was 1 millimeter across, which comes from volcanic glass and mineral ilmenite. Astronauts also brought back 93 grams of norite, totaling 7 centimeters across, and 156 grams of troctolite, totaling 5 centimeters across. In total, the Apollo 17 crew collected 741 individual rock and soil samples. Each of the Apollo missions has a unique story to tell, and each discovered something new about the moon. Manned missions like Apollo 11 and Apollo 17 allow for further exploration of the universe and knowledge about the moon more specifically. The first Apollo mission allowed humans to go further than they ever had before and paved the way for future missions like Apollo 17 that set up experiments that would gather data for years to come. Because of these missions, our knowledge of our universe continues to grow and generate curiosity.